Benedetta is a brand new film that's written and directed by Paul Verhoeven. So Benedetta is a film that was on my radar for quite some time, and it's a film that's obviously going to catch my attention, not only because of all the controversy and all of the shocking content that was said to come from the film, but also because it's a film that's obviously, at least in part, attempting to criticize religion and religious institutions, and any film that attempts that artistically in any way is gonna be right up my alley. But I am gonna come out and confess that I've never seen any Paul Verhoeven movie. I've never seen Starship Troopers. I've never seen Total Recall. I've even never seen RoboCop. And I know that's blasphemous in its own way. But in a way, I thought it could be refreshing for my perspective and outlook on this film, because I'm not going into this with any kind of preconceived notions or expectations from this filmmaker. And after watching Benedetta, I actually thought it was a pretty good movie. There's a lot in this film that I thought was impressive from not only a filmmaking standpoint, but from an acting standpoint in terms of the amount of dedication that these actresses gave in this role. And also the bravery and boldness of this film. Just the lengths that Paul Verhoeven goes in this film is quite admirable. And I do love the way that he pushes boundaries in this film. And obviously, if you're deeply religious and have, these strict convictions, especially regarding Christianity, this is not the film for you. Because clearly, in my opinion, this is a film that is in part set out to provoke a reaction, not only from all the audience members watching the film, but specifically from those who have deeply religious beliefs in the Christian faith. I saw a video on YouTube of this group of Catholics protesting a screening of Benedetta, and I think it's an entertaining video. But really, I don't think that's a surprising or even unreasonable reaction from these groups of Catholics who, again, genuinely believe this stuff. Because if I myself had deeply held beliefs in Christianity, I would be upset too. I don't think I'd go as far as to go and protest a movie or anything. That seems a little extra, but I'd probably avoid the movie, and I think a lot of Christians are going to avoid this movie. But I don't think that that's Verhoeven's sole motivation. I don't think that he is purely only trying to trigger Christians and to provoke a strong reaction from them. I do genuinely think that Verhoeven has some really honest and critical things to say. And I think that's why this film works so well, is because it's not just shock and no substance. There is plenty of substance in this film, and that's clearly expressed through the dialogue and a lot of the conflict and character situations that are presented in this film. And to me, that's really what held this film together and really kept me engaged throughout its runtime, is the fact that I felt like with almost every scene, Verhoeven did have something substantial to say about Christianity and the kind of psychological effect that strict religious beliefs can have on the human mind, specifically in this film involving nuns in 17th century Italy. And I really love the way all that is expressed in this film, especially in the first half, where you get to experience these visions or hallucinations, depending on how you're interpreting the film. And you get to have these experiences through the main character, where she's having these intense biblical visions of Jesus Christ and what Jesus Christ wants her to do regarding her real life struggles and problems that are all mostly having to do with sexuality. And the way that Jesus is depicted in these visions is, it's kind of humorous and, kind of silly. But at the same time, I do think it's an honest portrayal of what a sexually repressed person would interpret and view Jesus. Because I do believe that one of the biggest thematic expressions in this film, and just one of the largest takeaways that Verhoeven would want the audience to come away with, is the relationship between sexual repression and perversion and strict Christian beliefs and the institution that enforces them. And of course, it all depends on one's interpretation of this film, especially regarding the main character, Benedetta, who again is having these hallucinogenic and dreamlike visions. And he basically leaves it up to the audience to decide whether or not she's sincere about what she's experiencing, or if she's just kind of making it up as she goes along. And I think the answer is a bit of both. Like, I think that what we have in this film is a main character who, again, is sexually repressed and confined by the religious restrictions, and she's unable to express not only any sexuality of any kind because she's a nun, but it's even more restricted because of the fact that the love that she wants to express is homosexual. Therefore, her mind has become twisted and confused and perverse to the point where she's basically using these entrances and these visions that she's having as a way to kind of rise to power and establish divine authority and respect from everybody. So therefore, behind closed doors, she can basically do whatever the hell she wants. But not only that, I feel like that the film does demonstrate very well that people tend to bend and interpret things the way they like in order to make themselves and their actions feel more validated. So no, I mean, I don't think that she's actually seeing Jesus. Like, I don't think Verhoeven wants the audience to believe that Jesus Christ is real and she's experiencing him through her visions. But I do feel like he was trying to demonstrate that she is genuinely experiencing these visions, and it's through these visions that she eventually finds a way to express herself and feel validated in some way. Because really, what else are you to do when you're so insanely restricted by religious bounds? But one other thing I loved about this film was how multidimensional all these characters were. Besides maybe one character who's mostly innocent, which is Benedetta's partner, everyone in this film has some kind of baggage and is guilty of wrongdoings, but in some way you can kind of either see where they're coming from, or they have some moment of redemption that makes these characters much more interesting. But I know that a lot of you probably want to know, how far do I think this film goes? I'd say in terms of today's standards, this film actually does go pretty far. There is a lot of what people would consider to be sacrilegious imagery. A lot of scenes that contain clear blasphemy according to the Bible. I mean, there's religious objects that are treated in perverse ways, and there are clearly unholy acts that are being taken place in a building that is considered holy. And, all this stuff is presented in the film unforgivingly. And, I mean, that's one of my favorite aspects of the film. And also in terms of the sexuality in this film, it wasn't as sexual as I anticipated. Sure, like when it finally does build up to those intense scenes, they're definitely there and it does go there. But overall, I found it to be a bit sparing of the sexuality. And I don't think that was a positive or negative. It was just an interesting aspect of the film that I didn't expect. But I do think it was there enough to kind of make its point and to kind of have that emotional impact and reaction from the audience. But yeah, in terms of today's standards, I would say that it does go kind of far, because at first I was a little bit skeptical in the sense that it just seemed like an Oscar bait kind of movie. But then after seeing how far it actually went, I'm like, no, I think this is too edgy and too boundary pushing to be an Oscar bait movie. But in terms of film history and how far other movies have gone, I don't really think it's that crazy. I mean, of course, if you're of the Christian faith, this movie to you is going to be just absolute bonkers insane. But, for somebody who, just watches tons of films, doesn't have those kind of religious restrictions that, makes them offended at certain pieces of imagery and certain approaches of filmmaking, it's a little wild, but comparing it to another film like The Devils that came out in the 70s, The Devils is absolutely 100% much more insane and batshit than Benedetta. And honestly, that's kind of one of my criticisms of the film, is that I feel like Benedetta is a bit derivative of The Devils. And if you haven't seen The Devils, please check it out, especially if you really like Benedetta. The Devils is like Benedetta on steroids. Like, it is insane filmmaking. And again, like, it's a shocking kind of movie, but also just has layers and layers of substance beneath the surface. I feel like anything that you get out of Benedetta you would have gotten from the Devils and a whole lot more. And the only real difference between the two is that Benedetta is a much more intimate and a more contained film, while also having more of an emphasis on the restrictions of homosexuality. And The Devils kind of covers almost everything, while also being an incredibly boundary-pushing film. But I do have to give Benedetta credit, because I remember after watching The Devils, I thought to myself, films like this will never be made ever again. And then Paul Verhoeven comes along and makes Benedetta, and I'm like, well, I guess I was kind of wrong. I mean, it's not as crazy as The Devils, but to see a film like this in today's time that is still willing to make people feel this uncomfortable and really go that far, especially with the whole religious criticisms and the portrayal of sacrilegious imagery, I really respected and admired it for that. But in terms of criticisms of this film, there is this one scene involving one of her visions, and there's a bunch of CGI snakes, and it's like really bad. Like, I'm not saying, like, I'm not being nitpicky. Like, the CGI is pretty damn awful, and I just feel like that scene, not only was the CGI bad, but it just could have been captured in a much more subdued and non-over-the-top way, because it was just really cartoony, and it just took you out of the film. I understand it's supposed to be, like, a bit silly and humorous, but I feel like that scene was a little bit squandered. And again, I do think it is a little bit too much like The Devils, because not only is it like The Devils in terms of the thematic expressions and its criticism towards religion and religious institutions and the effect that it has on the mind and the whole psychological, like, it's very similar in that aspect, but it's also similar in terms of its narrative and plot structure. I mean, not only are nuns sexually repressed and you get these perverse images and visions through them, but you also have a whole segment in the third act that has to do with martyrdom that is present in both films. So they're both very much alike, and I think that is a bit of a negative more than it is a positive. So I'm going to give Benedetta a strong 7 out of 10.
Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant.
But yeah, I still really enjoy this film. I think it's pretty damn good. Before I sign off, I wanted to give a quick shield to my Patreon. If you're really interested in becoming a patron, I have lots of perks to offer you. $1 a month will give you access to these bi-weekly polls where you get to have some voting power and have a voice on the channel and decide what's the next film that I will watch and review. And for $5 a month, you get access to the Discord, and it's an absolute wonderful film community that you'll be a part of. We have Saturday night voice chats. I'm doing one tonight right after this video, where we always discuss the weekly blind recommendation. And we have movie nights every so often, and it's truly a blast. So if you're really interested in any of that stuff and want to help support the channel so I can quit my job and do this full time and give you guys more content, I would really appreciate that. But anyways, that's all I got to say about Benedetta. If you really enjoy what I had to say about the film, just give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.